off, I'm going to hand it over to Morris Montagu. He's our cloud solution architect, as well as Jake Gwynn, who's another cloud solution architect. Over to you guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, team. Hey, welcome, everyone. Pleasure to be here. As Jonathan said, my name is Morris. I'm a cloud solution architect working within the modern workspace and specializing on Power Platform in modern work, being able to automate, build custom apps through Power Apps. And today we're going to be talking about Power Automating Teams. And of course, my colleague, who also is an expert in Power Platform in modern work, Jake, he's going to be helping us answer any questions, right? So I want this to be interactive. If you have any questions, jump in on chat. Should be a fun session, right? There's going to be some hands-on. It's not just going to be me going through slides. So my hope is that everyone here who wants to follow along will have a couple of flows that you'll end up after the session with in Teams and Power Automate, and hopefully you learned one or two tricks. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I have a first few slides just to kind of set the stage, and eventually I'm going to jump off to my demo tenant and share my desktop, and we'll get creating some automation. So a quick agenda of what we're going to cover. I'm going to give a brief overview of what is Power Automate, right? I know we're staying in Teams, but we'll talk about what Power Automate is, so you kind of have an idea, high overview of that. Then we're going to jump into installing the MS Teams Power Automate app so that we don't even have to go outside of Teams to build our flows, our cloud flows, our automation, right? I'm going to show you how you can easily do that without having to open a browser and a million tabs. We're going to stay within Teams. And then once we've installed Teams, we're going to create two flows if time allows. And, I've done this session, a few times, so we should be able to get through it. So the first one's going to be saving a message to OneNote, leveraging the send a message or trigger a flow from a message in Microsoft Teams. That's a very popular one. So this flow is very, very popular. I know everyone's going to like it. And once we create that one, which is pretty easy from a template, we're going to do another flow from scratch, which is going to be using a couple of actions, right? We're going to trigger a flow based on a document being created on a SharePoint Online site. And then we're going to send a notification to a Teams channel so that you know that a document was created. So just a quick example to kind of get the point across, right? And both of these flows could be expanded. And the idea here is to kind of give you, high overview, get you with a couple of flows so that you can take this, to the moon once you've learned, some tips and tricks in today's session. So what is Power Automate, right? Basically, it's our tool within the 365 suite that allows us to extend the 365 services, right? Not only can we extend and build automation with like Teams, with SharePoint, with OneDrive, with Outlook, it allows us to connect to 950 plus, services, third party outside of Microsoft, right? We can connect to things like YouTube, Twitter, Salesforce, ServiceNow, you name it. There's a connector for almost everything. And if there's not a connector, right, we allow you to create custom connectors to tie into anything that has an API that would allow us to, build automation in the cloud. But we can do things like build flows for notifications, like I mentioned in the agenda, right? One of the ones that we're going to do towards the end of the session is going to be what I would call a notification flow. When a file is created, let us know via Teams. We can send email if we want to. We can send mobile notifications. Another popular scenario is copy files. So we can actually, using that same trigger, when a file is created on a SharePoint Online site, right, for some project, as soon as that file is created, we can actually grab that file and make a copy and put it elsewhere, right? We can collect data as well. This is one of the most popular scenarios to using 365 services like Microsoft Forms, which is pretty popular. I love Microsoft Forms. I can create a quick survey. I can send the link out to my recipients, right? Every time someone fills out that form, I can kick off a Power Automate flow that collects that data. I can store that data on a SharePoint list. I can send like a receipt to the end users. So I can build, further automation with Forms and Power Automate. And another one, last but not least, another very popular method is using approvals. So using the approvals connection, that's now baked into Teams as well. So as we're talking documents, right? When a document is created on a SharePoint site, and maybe we need to implement, an approval process, The moment that gets created, I can kick off a flow, and that flow is going to send an approval email to some approver, and they can say approve, reject, right? And that keeps the flow going until we can say, hey, this document looks good after maybe went through 3 approvers, and then it's approved and it shows up on SharePoint for everyone. So this is just a few examples of what Power Automate is, and we'll take a look once we create our first one. I'm going to take you behind the scenes because the first flow we will create, we don't even go into edit mode. It's all done for us, right? Which is amazing. But I'll show you, what's behind the flow. So one thing that you need to remember, right, when it comes to a cloud flow, there's mainly 2 pieces. Every flow has to have a trigger, and it can only have one trigger. And that's going to be what kicks off that flow, right? That workflow. And inside of that flow, right after the trigger, we can have as many actions as you want, right? You can have logic like conditions, but there's, again, 2 major components, the trigger and the action. And you'll get to see that in action today. So the first thing we'll do, and before I jump into, and actually, let me see, I'm going to make an allusion to, before I jump into my session, into my demo, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit to this slide because the very first thing we're going to do is install the Power Automate app in Teams. But sometimes, when you start following along, if you see that when you go to the Teams App Store, if you do not see the Power Automate app in Teams, that tells us a few things. Likely, your Microsoft Teams admins in your org have blocked. Boo! I don't want them to be blocking my Power Automate. But if you don't see it, it's because they likely have blocked it through a not permission policy in Teams. So if that is the case, right, I'm going to show you a workaround, right? You'll be able to follow along. I'm going to show you how to go directly to Power Automate to build your flow, and then we'll come back to Teams. But one thing, there's several of you here, no reason to block Power Automate in Teams, right? This is something that most of you already have licensing for, and you can take full advantage of. And so if it comes down to it, let us know. We're happy to have a conversation with your IT team to make sure, they allow this. And that's controlled through app permission policy on the Teams admin center, right? I don't think many of you are admins, but we can help with, step by step on what you need to do to allow Power Automate. And as you can see on this slide, right, this screenshot is from the Teams admin center. This is what I would want to see, right? When we go check your permission policies, I want to make sure that Power Automate is allowed and that Power Automate actions are also allowed so that we can run those flows that we're going to build today directly from Teams. So this is just kind of like a disclaimer. I know last time we did this session, we had a few folks that couldn't follow along, and I'm going to give you a workaround today, but I did want to make allusion to why you may not see Power Automate in Teams. Okay. Awesome. So this is when we're going to jump off. I'll kind of bring it back to a previous slide. We're going to install Teams, and instead of me going step by step, I'm going to do this with you on my demo tenant. So I'm going to share my desktop team here internally, make sure that, and I'll wait a few seconds to make sure that it's showing correctly. So let me bring this here. And let me bring up my Teams. So I am sharing, and we may need to do something on our side. Just want to make sure, give it a few seconds to make sure that my desktop is sharing.
You are good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to install Power Automate in Teams. So here's my demo tenant, one of the many demo tenants I personally have that it's kind of my playground. So what I need you to do is we're going to go to teams.microsoft.com. Right, if you're following along, if you're signed in with your normal account that you access meetings, right, you don't have to use the web browser like I'm doing. I'm using the web client because I'm using my desktop client to be on this session here. But you can, it's okay if you want to do it from a web browser as well, right? You can go to teams.microsoft.com or just use your desktop Teams client. So once you get there, the next step, right, how do we get Power Automate, right? We're going to go to what we call the Teams App Store. So on the left-hand side, on our rail, what we call the left rail, at the very bottom, there should be an apps section. We're going to click on apps. And then I love to search. Searching is for me, the fastest way to get to what I'm looking for. So on the search here on the top left, I'm going to search for Power Automate. Right? And here we go. So you'll likely get like 3 apps if you search exactly by, Power Automate. The one that we want is the Microsoft can publish one. What you're going to do on it is you're going to click on it and click Add, right? And this is going to install this app for me in my Teams client. And then the extra step that I want you to take once you click Add, so that you can quickly get to this, right, in the future when you start creating more flows, is I want you to, on the left rail, you see Power Automate is here, right click on it and just click pin, right? And that's going to pin it for you so that it's easy access, right? And I know we can only have so many here. So even if you pin it, and you may have been pinning other awesome apps that you use, right? At least, you can click on the 3 dots and it's going to keep it in order from here, right? So just keep that in mind. And this is where, let me take a few steps back. For those that, as I mentioned on my last slide, right, if you don't see Power Automate in Teams, it's because it's blocked on your side. So one thing you can do to follow along on my next step, which is going to be creating the flow, is you can go directly to, and I'm gonna, Jake, if you can post the direct link to Power Automate, you can go directly to make.powerautomate.com, right? This is every service that we have, right, has its own site, but the cool thing is that no reason to get all disorganized and have a bunch of windows open, right? When you can try to stay within Teams. And that's one goal that we have at Microsoft, is to bring, whatever application that you may be using, like in this case, Power Automate, we want to give you an easy route of using it in Teams, but just giving you a workaround for those of you that can't use it and follow along inside of Teams. So just know that. And then thank you, Jake, for posting that link. So let me come back over here. So I have Power Automate installed. I'm going to give you a quick rundown here now that we've installed it before we create our first flow, right? So when you first arrive on it, you have a couple tabs at the top. You have your home, which this is going to show you any flows that you have previously created, right? If you're new to Power Automate, if this is the very first time you're jumping into it, right, you're not going to see any flows, right? You'll see 2 at the end of the session. But for me, as you can see, I have a few. This is my main demo tenant and my main account that I use. So this shows me a list of flows, and these are only flows that are leveraging the Microsoft Teams connector, which I really, really like this filter, right? We do this for you. So if you look on the top right, there's this little Microsoft Teams flow filter. If I switch this to all flows, this is going to show me all of my flows that have connectors to something like Outlook, Forms, and are not necessarily connected to Teams. So you see how that changed. But I really like that the default filter, right, is, if you're using Power Automate in Teams, it's likely because you're trying to do some automation with between, some other service and Teams. So this gives me the ability to see just those team specific flows. And another thing that I really, really like, I've been personally using it inside of Teams for a while now, is I like this status column. This status column, the product group needs to bring this into the full version of Flow. Let me show you what I mean, right? I can easily turn off flows. I can see the status quickly. If I go to the full site, if I go to my flows, there's no, you see this, there's no like column for me to say on or off. I actually have to go into a particular flow, and, I have to look at it from here. So I don't like that. I actually like the view that I get from Teams of being able to quickly switch, flows on as I need to if I'm doing some troubleshooting. So that is your flow list. Then at the bottom right, to help you get started, give you a jump start, right from the home tab, you can start with popular Teams templates. So all of these templates that you see here are pre-built flows for you to get you started, right? And a lot of these, when you click on them, and that's going to be we're going to work on this one here in a little bit, right? You don't even go into edit mode, right? You don't even need to know that the flow has to trigger and, actions, right? We just do it for you as things become more automated, right? And, especially with Copilot coming, I'm not going to talk much about Copilot. Things are going to get super exciting here in the next few months. We're making it super easy for everyone to build automation without you needing to, code or know how to write formulas, expressions, etc. So this is the home tab. If you are one of those people like me that like to click around, right, you maybe click on create. And create here allows you to kind of go in and look at more of the templates, right? This allows you to see categories for like all the templates from like top picks, which are heavily used. If you want to look in some flows that use approvals, right, you can come into here and you can see like just a breakdown and I can also create from blank. Chat, this is basically the Power Automate chatbot, right? So there's a lot of automation that we can actually leverage the Power Automate bot. So there's times when, for example, approvals, or if we're using adaptive cards, which is another concept in Microsoft Teams that we can use with Power Automate, right? This is where you can find those conversations with the Power Automate bot. As you can see, I actually have an adaptive card for some other process that I automate here. So this is just a way to organize and quickly get to like anything that's leveraging, the Power Automate bot or adaptive cards, right, within Teams. And the About tab, right, that just tells you, what version you're running, nothing special there. So we're going to be on the Home tab. We'll be doing most of what we need to do today on the Home tab. So, and again, if there's any questions, feel free to drop those in chat again. I'm just kind of going through to make sure we get all the content. If anyone runs into any weird issues too as we're working through it, please let us know. The one issue that I think we identified this morning that's affecting a lot of our clients is when you go to office.com, which I'm going to make an allusion to, it's having a couple of issues. So I'll mention that in a second, but let us know. I want to make sure that everyone, is comfortable and can follow along. So every question is a great question. So make sure you don't leave with your questions unanswered, please. Okay. All right. So now that we've installed it, we're ready to create our very first flow. So this is where things start to get exciting. So the one that we're going to do first, and for those of you that got the handout, right, we're going to move into that handout that talks about setting up the save a message to OneNote. So if you look on my screen, the one that we're going to do is this one, right? This is a very popular template, kind of based, on the number of, uses that you see there on the bottom right corner. So this flow, right? Why do I like to demo this flow? One is because it's super easy to set up, right? And two, I'm a big OneNote user. I love OneNote. I personally use it on a personal basis and on a work basis. That's where I keep all my notes for all my clients, right? When I'm going into meetings, I'm very organized, and OneNote helps me to stay organized. And one of the things that, I love about this one is being able to save messages, because often, right, we're engaging in very good conversations, whether it's a private chat, one-to-one that you have in Teams, or some like channeling Teams that people are posting really good links or information that you're going to need to reference later, right? But there's so much that if it wasn't for this flow or another built-in function that I'm going to show you, right, it would be impossible to like find that information. Even though for those of us that can search, right, I still, struggle sometimes trying to look for that message. So this flow is amazing because I can go to some message that contains some really good information, run this flow, and I know that it's going to put it on my OneNote that I can easily go to find it and search for it, right? Much better than searching within Teams. So one thing that some of you may be asking, well, there's a way to save messages already in Teams, so why even have a flow? So for those of you that may not know, right, if you go to any message, whether it's a private message or like some Teams like message in a channel, like I'm going to let's go to this community connection general, right? There's this message that my buddy Alan posted this morning. If I click the three dots here, right, there's an out of the box, this is baked into Teams. There's the save this message function. And that basically, you can do this as much as you want. And this puts this message, I can go to my picture here and I click on save, right? And this is going to show me any messages that I have saved. So this is great. Nothing wrong with this, right? What the flow is going to do is take it up a step, up a notch, where like I'm going to be able to send this same message to a OneNote notebook, but I'm also going to be able to put additional notes, right? Like something to complement whatever that message is, and be able to like modify, remove whatever I need to do. So that's why I like, that flow instead of using this. But just wanted to, so you're not like, oh, there's an easy way of doing this. This might be easier, but creating the flow, as you will see today, doesn't take much, right? And that will give you an additional option to organize your messages in a much better way using OneNote. Okay, so let's come back to Power Automate here. And we're going to go ahead and get started with this flow. And a couple of prerequisites that I recommend before we click on this and start configuring is I would recommend to have an existing OneNote notebook already created. For those of you that have used OneNote, I would expect you to have one, maybe a few. And if not, if you're completely new to OneNote, right, you can go to onenote.microsoft.com. Jake, if you can put some links for me there. This is where I mentioned I was going to have you go to Office. Office.com, if there's any link that you want to remember for Microsoft 365, right? Because we have so many apps today, just remember Office.com when you go there. There's these apps here. This is what's not, we're having a bug today. Perfect timing. This is where you would see all of your 365 apps, and there would be a OneNote app that you can click on. And from there, right, you would be able to create, a new notebook or additional notebooks. But since we're having that issue right now, I just went directly, like I mentioned, you can go to OneNote.microsoft.com, and that'll take you directly to your notebook. So in this case, I already have a notebook on here. And before I proceed, so it sounds like the flow, I'm looking at the chat, the flow is not in my template list. And if you can clarify on chat for me to kind of like let Jake take over, are you looking at it from Teams or directly from Power Automate? Because if we're doing it from Power Automate, just for those of you that have to go outside of Teams to look at templates, go to make.powerautomate.com, go to templates, and to search here, because this is going to give you a lot more templates. If you search for OneNote in here, just to show you, I'll hit enter. The one that you're looking for should be on the second row, third one from left to right. So, but if we're talking about Teams, I'm expecting that save message to OneNote. I'm expecting it to be here on the first row, third one on the row. But again, let us know if you are having trouble finding it. And I'm expecting, I think if we do OneNote here, I think this is just going to search like, this is just searching flows that you have already created. And let me quickly, I have some time. So let's go back to create. I'm just going to quickly look in all templates. So if you don't see it from the home, we can go to create on the Power Automate in Teams, search for OneNote. And there you go. So this is another way of, and this one only comes up with that most popular one. So that's another way to get to it. But let us know. I'll let Jake if we have any other issues there. Awesome. So let me come back to home. And again, going back to OneNote, I already have a notebook created for me. However, it's pretty empty, right? So the second prerequisite to be successful in the setup of this flow that I would recommend is if you have an existing notebook already, or if you want to create a new one, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and add a section that's going to be specifically to save those messages coming from Teams. So in this case, I'm going to say notes from Teams, and you can call it whatever here. Yes, yeah. So Michael, if you go to office.com, if you don't see the apps in here, that is, you mentioned global issue. Yeah, there's an issue going on that the product group is aware of, and they're trying to fix it. So it's affecting several clients. So don't freak out when you go over here. The apps are still functioning. You just need to go directly to them, FY. Thank you. All right. So again, I got my section created in OneNote. I think I'm ready to go. I got my personal notebook. I got my section ready to go. So let's go back to Teams. Time to set up that flow. So I'm going to do it from the Home tab in my Power Automate app. And the next step is we're going to click on this from here, right? You're going to get a pop-up that says create a flow, save a message to OneNote. You can, by default, it has a name that we give it, save a message to OneNote. I'm going to leave it like that. You can change it if you want to. This name is going to be the one that we will select when we actually go and run this flow, right? This is whatever your name you give it here is what we're going to look for when we're trying to run this flow, and you'll see how that's done here once we create it. But once you click on that, it's going to take it a few seconds. You shouldn't take it too long to create connections for you for this flow. So this flow leverages Teams, OneNote, and Office 365 users connections. So I'm expecting, I want all of you to be able to get a green check mark. Sometimes if you worked with flow in the past, right, if you created flows that leverage these connections, there may be a few of you that are getting like a red asterisk. Let us know. Jake can walk you through on how to fix that. But for the rest of you, I'm expecting this to be pretty smooth here. Once you get all 3 green check marks for all 3 connections, we're going to click next. Okay. Okay. And once we click next, the next step here is doing a little bit of configuration on our flow. So what we're going to do first is notebook in which to add the message, right? So hence the prerequisite, the recommendation of having your notebooks ready to go. So in here, you see two notebooks, right? So you're like, what's this other notebook here? This flow can actually be configured to work with the OneNote notebook stored on the SharePoint site, like a team notebook. So it's not just for your personal use. So I could point it to that, but in this case, right, this flow that I'm building is for me to save like important information that I want to reference later. So I'm going to choose my personal notebook. In the section in which to add the message, that's where I recommend it to have it preset so that you can just follow along. So notes from Teams, that's that one section that I created a few minutes ago. So I'm going to select that. And once you have that, I'm going to create flow. So let me backtrack a little bit. All right. I know I'm seeing chat right. I'm not going to continue. I want to we have time. So again, I saw some of you, if for some reason you get a red exclamation mark, right? Like one of these is not happy. You can do a couple of things. You can click on these three dots and click add new connection. That is going to add kind of like a duplicate connection for that connector, and that's okay. It's okay to have like more connections than one. Another thing that you can do, right, for those of you that have built one of these before, and I think Jake posted instructions on chat here, if you go to Power Automate directly to the site, so make that powerautomate.com, and we go under data on the left-hand side, if we click connections, this is where you can see any connections that you created in the past, and you can actually fix them from here. So just to show you really quick, so you see I'm going to have a lot on mine, but you're going to see these broken, right? And any that are broken, you're going to be able to click on fix this connection and just follow the prompts to re-authenticate. Sometimes they just lose the token, maybe you changed your password not long ago, but this is how you can kind of control and fix any connections for those of you that have built flows in the past. So, okay. Yeah, and this is being recorded. So again, it's being recorded, so you'll be able to go through, backtrack, because sometimes I may kind of get excited and go too quick. But I'm taking a few steps back to make sure that everyone, right? And again, there's sometimes you might run into an issue that, due to time, we can kind of, we're not able to fully resolve it. Otherwise, we spend, more time that we have allowed. But I think I saw some questions around the sections, right? Again, this is the section that I created. I recommend to do that beforehand. And then once that's created, I'm going to cancel this really quick just to kind of go in. I haven't saved it. So I'm going to go at it again as if I'm starting from scratch. Same name. You can see it's thinking hard on mine. It sets my connections. Okay. So once you have your connections, I'm going to click next. And then set up your flow. This is where we select our notebook. So personal notebook. And then we're going to do the section that I created. Okay, if you don't have the personal notebook, then so that's likely, and again, you're going to see whatever notebooks you've created. So personal notebook is just a custom name, right? So you may see some other notebook that says your name at your org. That's a default name, depending on when you got your OneDrive account set up. But again, you can just pick one that you've worked with, right, as you're testing. So you don't necessarily look for personal notebook. That's just the name that I gave this notebook that I'm using. So don't follow it to a T. So as long as you see something here, and if for some reason you don't see one, right, you can actually click this. But this requires you to like go grab information about that notebook. So that's why I recommend to have one created to begin with. So. But yeah, so just to those some of those questions that you're not seeing personal notebook, just pick one that you see there on the list. And then once you select that, if you don't have a section, you should be able to create one from here. But you see, this is why I don't like doing this. This is because you actually have to create it. You have to create it, then go grab the URL. So that's why I have it on my cheat sheet on my one pager. I recommend to actually have this pre-created so that we can easily just select that note from there. So there you go. Thank you, Jake. All right, so let's proceed here. I'm going to create the flow. And let the magic work. So in a few seconds, right? Once you select that notebook, you select your section, you click create, you should get this pop-up that says workflow added successfully. And then this tells you exactly the steps that you need to take to run this, flow, which is, basically by going to any message, we can trigger this flow. So I'm going to show you this. Yep, and Renee, yeah, there's I'll if one of my colleagues can provide the link to where you can download the one pagers that have like step by step on what to do. We definitely have all of that for you. And right now, what I pasted in chat is just these steps for those of you that are kind of with me, that everything's been working smoothly. Okay. So once this is done, I'm going to click done. So the flow is done. So if I go to Power Automate here, so I'm on the Home tab, at the very top, right, save a message to OneNote. It's on by default. It's freshly created. Now what? Now how do we trigger this flow? Let's test it, okay? So to test it, I'm going to do two tests. I'm going to save a message from a Teams channel, and then I'm going to save a message on a one-to-one chat for me. So let's go over here to let's go to a Teams channel first. I'm going to go to this HLS Community Connection team, to the general channel. This same message that I saved earlier using the Teams, built in, I'm going to, let's save it with my new flow. So how do I trigger this flow? I'm going to click the three dots here. And for channel messages, the steps are going to be slightly different than when we do this from a private chat. You'll see what I mean. So when you do it from a channel message, you actually have to click on the three dots and then click on more actions. And under more actions, you're going to see your flow. So if you called it something else on the setup, right, like I mentioned, it does let you say change the name, look for whatever you called it. In my case, I left it default, and that is save a message to OneNote. So I'm going to click on this. And this brings up what we call an adaptive card. This fancy pop-up, it's an adaptive card. So this tells me, save a message to OneNote, add a note. This is what I was saying, right? This is built into this, workflow. I can add something additional. This is a really great link that I need to reference later, right? And this is optional. You don't need to type anything. You can, simply leave that blank and click submit. Okay, and before I'm gonna run this one, and then I'll kind of keep an eye on chat. My three dots in the channel don't offer more or save to OneNote. Okay, so I'll come back to that. We'll do a couple more tests. As soon as I successfully submit that, I get another adaptive card. That's a confirmation that says message saved to OneNote. Message from Alan Steiner was successfully saved. And this even has a button that I can click on, right? And this is going to take me directly to that page for that message, right? And as you can see, there it is. I'm back in my notebook that I selected, my personal notebook, notes from Teams, and here's the message with the additional notes. Okay. So kind of coming back to some of the chats that I'm seeing. Again, if the flow was successfully created, right? So if you're still not seeing it, let's go back to Power Automate really quick. So if you were able to successfully set it up, let's go back to the Home tab. Let's make sure that we see your flow here. So as soon as this loads, save a message to OneNote, make sure that it's on. And let's come back to the chat and click on that three dots. And it's going to be under more actions and then save a message. Now, I'm going to mention another disclaimer. If the flow is created, you can see it. And if for some reason you do not see your flow, it's either going to be wait a few minutes. Sometimes replications may be slow. But if you don't see it after like 30 minutes, then that tells me that your Teams admin has also blocked Power Automate actions. So from the admin side of the house, there's the Power Automate app that an admin can block, which is the one that we use to build the flow. And there's an additional app that they can select that's called Power Automate Actions. So likely they blocked that. So if you create the flow, but you can see this, then for this one, you won't be able to proceed further until we go have a discussion with your Teams admin and be like, why are you blocking me from launching this really cool flow? So just a disclaimer there, that might be what's happening and nothing that we can do quickly to get you around that. So at least for this particular flow. The other one, we're not going to trigger from Teams. The other one should work because we're just going to be sending notifications. But just wanted to make some information there for those of you that are not seeing that more actions. And that's because our admins are being mean to us, just to put it like that. All right. So I'll do one more test. Let me go back. So I tested that worked correctly. Let's go to a one-to-one chat. So I'm gonna go to Alan. Sent me this really good video about list and approvals put together by Reza Durrani, who put some amazing content. So shout out to Reza. If you want to learn how to do Power Platform automation, Power Apps, follow Reza. He now works at Microsoft. Super intelligent. I've learned a lot from him. So just call out. You see a lot of Reza on my demo tenants. So I want to save this really cool video so that I can watch it later because I'm multitasking today. I have a lot going on. I know it's going to get lost. So how do I save this message here? Very similar, right? I'm going to click on the message. I'm going to click on the three dots. And for one-to-one chat messages, one thing you'll notice is that you don't have to go to more actions. You see how like magically it just showed up there? So one less step that you have to do on a one-to-one chat or like a group chat that's outside of the team. So I can actually click save a message to OneNote. And I'm just going to put a note because I want to save this information. Reza is awesome. And hit submit. And that one successfully saved. So I can click view note. And just to show you what it looks like from. So, and here we go. So the way this flow is set up, built in the backend, right, is for every message that you save, it's going to create and put that message on a new page, right? But from here, once you have it, you can kind of manually organize it if you want to. You can expand that flow further if you want to. I'll show you what it looks like from the backend really quick. But this is, showing you the power of a super simple flow that was pretty much created for you. So let me backtrack a little bit just to kind of show you. Let's go to our flows just to show you what it looks like, right? Before we create our another one from no, so as is, the title cannot be altered. Great question, Brian. That's what I was getting to. If you wanted to make this flow your own, spice it up a bit more, like make it, do more than what it does out of the box, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go to Power Automate. I'm going to take you behind the scenes on this flow before we jump into our other super simple flow from scratch. I'm going to click on this save a message to OneNote. And here we go, right? So I clicked into it. This brings me into the details. I can actually see, the successful runs. Once you start messing with the flow, likely, there might be issues when you're troubleshooting. This is going to be your best friend. You can actually come in here, look at, like the step by step that the flow's taken, right, to do that automation. So you can see here how it's for selected message, it's creating the page, it's getting information about you, and then it's, sending information back to Teams. So just quickly showing the runs. What I want to show you is let's go into edit mode really quick. And I'm going to go into edit mode just for those of you that are wondering, where can I go to make changes to it? So I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just bringing you here so you know how to go into edit mode. But you can see in here, right, for a selected message, this is the adaptive card that allows you to trigger, right, and put that additional information to go along with the message. Create a page section. This is where someone mentioned, how can I change the information that's going through? This is where you can see, so we got some HTML. This is dynamic content. I'll talk more about what dynamic content here is on the flow that we're going to create from scratch. This gets my information about myself, and then we respond back to the Teams module. So this is an adaptive card, right? So this is behind the scenes. This is kind of like a complex flow. It's not an easy one, but it's all done for you. But it is possible to come in and make changes if you want to. And this is where you can come in and again make whatever changes you would want. But I'm not gonna because I could go crazy making all kinds of changes, making it even better. But I want to make sure I don't overwhelm all of you, but it is the sky's the limit with Power Automate. Okay, awesome. So again, that's our first flow. So all of you, and for those of you, I know some of you are having issues because admins have blocked some functionality. Apologies there. Again, let us know. I offered to go talk to them and convince them. I'm pretty good at convincing them. The next one we're going to create, so we're going to jump over to our next flow, which is going to be creating one from scratch, right? We're going to create a flow that's going to leverage the SharePoint connector, and it's going to leverage the Teams connector, right? So for this example, we're going to use a flow that it's going to send a notification, a message to a channel when a file is created on a SharePoint site, right? And this one can have various use cases. I'm going to kind of give you a pretty bare bones one that you can build upon, right? You could do approvals for it. You can do more. But the point here is to show you how to create one from scratch, because you already learned how to create one from a template, which is easy to get started with. But how do we create one from scratch so we can actually see, the Power Apps, editor, Flow Studio? So from the Home tab, if we're back, and again, this one, for those of you that can't use Power Automate in Teams, you can definitely do this as well from Power Automate. So instead of you can follow along from here. So you can create new flow from here. But I'll kind of bring it back to Teams in here. But so from Teams, to create one from scratch, under the Home tab, top right corner, we're going to click New Flow. And this is going to bring us into the Create tab. And then we want to create from blank, right? Create from blank. And if you happen to be using Power Automate directly, you want to go to Power Automate. You can click on the, once you go on Home, on the left-hand side, click Create. And from here, you're going to do Automated Cloud Flow. And I would recommend to just skip from here, just do skip, so that it brings you, because it's just to kind of replicate the same steps that I'm going to take in Teams. But I'm going to leave that there, and I'm just going to continue to drive from Teams, so I don't have to keep switching back and forth. Just wanted to show those of you that are following from Power Automate. Okay, so I'm back in Teams. Like you can see, right, I like using it this way because one less tab, one less tab that I have to deal with. Or, if I'm in my Teams desktop, I don't even have to be on the browser, right? So it's embedded into the Teams experience, which is awesome. So, okay, so we're on our flow. This is scratch. What do we do? What's going to be our trigger? So for this example, the trigger that we're going to use is a SharePoint trigger for the SharePoint. It's a SharePoint trigger for the SharePoint connector. And it is called when a file is created. That's what I would type. And you will see as soon as you start searching, right, it starts filtering down. And the one that you want is when a file is created, properties only. When a file is created, properties only. As I go through, I'll take some screenshots, put them in chat, right? Next thing is we need to have a SharePoint site, just like you had to have a OneNote notebook to set, that other example. I'm hoping all of you have a SharePoint site that you have access to, that you can test with. And if not, right, just, pick one. And, as long as you can create a document, you'll be able to test and follow along here. So for mine, I'm going to select, let's go to site address. And you can see here, this helps you out, right? You don't need to go and grab a URL and copy it, paste it. This is going to recognize recent sites that you have access to, right? So as you can see, I have a huge list here. For mine, I'm going to select this HLS community connection, which is, part of that team that I was, sending messages to OneNote from. The next step with this one is select a library. So we're going to select a library name. I'm going to stick with documents, which is basically, right, what I'm doing here, just to, show you what is it that he's picking, right? This is a SharePoint site that I'm working with. Here's the documents, folder. And then I'm in the general channel. There's another subfolder called general. And then I have this project subfolder inside of general that I created. And this is my flow. What I wanted to do is anytime a new file gets created inside of here, I want to get a notification in Teams. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, right? That's what I'm trying to automate. So let me come back here. So there's the library name and then the folder. To select it, right, we have a really easy browsing experience here. So I'm going to I click on this little folder icon, and that brings up this little other pop-up. And from here, I'm going to go to shared documents. That's so shared documents, that's actually this documents folder. It's actually shared documents raw. That's the actual name for it. That used to confuse me way back in the day on my days of SharePoint. So shared documents. And then I want to go into the general channel and then projects. Here we go. So that is the folder. So this trigger, right? The way I'm configuring this trigger is this flow is going to fire every time a new file is created in this folder. So there we go. I have my one trigger, and remember to my intro, right? A flow has to have a trigger, and it can only have one trigger. But here's the magic. So here's where I'm going to send that notification. So the next action that you're going to add, you're going to search post a message in a chat or a channel. Post a message in a chat or a channel, and you can see there's several things we can do with Teams. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff, like not even fun, but useful stuff to automate, right? To notify people, post messages, post approvals. But in this case, we're looking for post a message in a channel. Post a message in a channel. As I'm going through, I'm going to take another screenshot, just, for those, if I'm, I know I'm kind of looking at time, otherwise I would slow down a bit. All right, so post, so let's configure this one here. So for post a card, actually I selected the wrong one. So excuse me, let me delete this one. That's not the one I wanted. So ignored post a message to a channel. I chose the wrong one. Here we go. Post a message to a channel. This is the one that we want. And I'll just take a screenshot here. Fix the one that I put in chat so I don't confuse you. And just quickly do that. There you go. And post as, what I recommend for this one, best practice, choose the flow bot. That's going to make it to where like your name is not all over it. It's still going to have your name in the notification. You'll see what I mean when we test it, but that's what I recommend doing. Post in, this is where we're going to select we're going to do a channel. Let's do a channel. A Teams channel. We need to select the team, and you see how it starts helping me out, right? Like it's helping me out. Anytime you see a red asterisk, that tells you that that's required, so we have to select something. So I want to post this notification on the HLS community connection, and the channel that I want to do is general. And then the message, right? This is where Power Automate shines. This is where I can come in and make this like dynamic. What do I mean by dynamic? Is I can use information, all of this information, like as soon as I put my cursor here, this is what we call the dynamic content box. This metadata is information about that file that was created that you can leverage on this message. So I can do things like new file added to projects, and I can put title, and then I can even format that message nicely, right? So it's not just like raw. And here's where I can come in and say, hey, I want to grab the name of that file. So you see all of this metadata information that I can inject into that custom message, right? That's going to be dynamic based on each new file. And the one that I'm looking for here is called file name with an extension. So when you're searching dynamic content, search for what you're looking for. Sometimes, you're going to get a lot of information. So take advantage of the search. So I'm going to put that in there. So that is going to be whatever name, the file has that someone creates. And then another thing I'm going to add is created by, I'm going to format it really quick. That there. And then I'm going to give it, I'm going to search for created by. And you see I have various pieces of information for the person that created this, for the user. I can put their email, but in this case, right, what makes the most sense is I just want to get the display name. So, and sky's the limit here, right? I could put a link if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. There's a lot of information how to do that, but I can go crazy with this for demo purposes. I'm going to keep it as simple as that so that we can test it. And that is pretty much it. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this and put that here. And one very important step that I should have mentioned at the beginning, that this drives me nuts. I still do it when I'm moving fast, right? On the top left corner, please always remember to name your flows. Don't take like Untitled or the out of the box name. So this one, I'm going to call it on the top right corner, put your cursor in there. And this is going to be file notification, right? Whatever name you want to give it so that it's easy to find. And then once you do that, click save. And we're going to test to make sure that this one works. So this one is triggered completely different from that other one, right? This is what we call an automated flow. The other one is a button trigger because you actually have to take action to trigger it. But this one is going to trigger the moment a file is created. So let's test this. How do we test it? While we are on edit mode, if we go to the top right corner, we can click on test. We're going to click manually to perform the starting action to trigger it and click test, right? And this is going to tell you to see it work, perform the starting action, right? And what is the starting action? We need to go to SharePoint and create a file. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go outside of Teams really quick. I'm already on this projects folder that I configure per my trigger. I'm going to click new. Let's just do a Word document. When I do it this way, it automatically, saves it for you. That's, OneDrive, SharePoint to its finest, automatically saving the work for you so it's never lost. So this one's already saved document. I'm just going to type something in there, let it auto save. I'm not going to do much in there, and then I'll close this. You see it saved. I'm going to close it, and then there's that document. And once I go back to this, we should see the flow. So I created it. It's thinking. And we'll give it a little bit of time to make sure. And I'm going to exit. Actually, I'm going to keep it in here, right? One thing that I'm going to mention, right? When you're testing this, I think what's happening right now, typically when I do this test, is instantaneous. This trigger right here with the licensing that a lot of us have, which is E5, don't make any changes. Wait at least 5 minutes, because this trigger, even though you think it's instantaneous, depending on the licensing that you have, it may take up to 5 minutes for it to kick off. So that's what I think it's happening right now, because I think I have everything set up correctly and my file is there on the correct channel. I'm going to refresh this, wait for it to do its thing. And I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to, when I test it like that, I don't like messing with it. Let me come back over here to flow directly. This is the exact same flow that I'm looking at. You can see that it hasn't triggered just yet. So I'm just waiting for it to do its thing. But due to time, because I want to give, we have a couple closing slides, right? Trust me, this is a super simple one. It should work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. So I'm going to bring up the exact same flow that I have, because it may take, I think it's going to take up to the 5 minutes on my side. So this is the exact same flow for another account. I'm going to show you exact same thing that I just built, except that this one points to a different SharePoint site. So that is the exact same flow that we're creating. And this one already ran. And this one, actually, I added a little bit more this morning when I was testing something. But once this flow successfully runs, right, what the notification looks like, if we go to, so this one is actually pointing to general. So once it runs, this is what the notification is going to look like. So it is, with the exception per my cheat sheet, right? The one thing that you won't have is that I added to this one is, because I build a lot of these flows. So there's actually a link that I added, right? Per my example, I only had you add title created by. But you can also do things like adding a link to the document so that whoever, gets a notification, they can click on it. And then that opens directly to the document, which, that one's been deleted because I actually, like I mentioned, it was going to a different SharePoint site. But just wanted to show you what the notification kind of looks like. And then if we come back to still, it's acting up. I don't think I selected. And you can see, and I've been doing this for years, so I've seen it all when it comes to, I think it's just taking its sweet time. But yeah, let's go ahead and any questions? I think I saw a lot of chatter on chat. That was pretty much, as much as we would be able to show. So I'm going to bring it back to our slide deck. And I have that prepped so we can stay. Give me a sec here, and I'll bring that over.
Awesome. Really great content, Morris. Really well done. Awesome. This was an amazing session. Remember, we'll have the recording, the cheat sheet, and the presentation up on the Health and Life Science blog in a few hours. We'll be working on it. I want to say thank you to them, as well as our other hosts, Sarah and Jonathan. We couldn't do this without you being here, but don't fret. We've got another session at 2:00 today. Just go sign up, and 2 more tomorrow to close us out. That's 9 sessions, Teams Productivity Summit right here. But we would love your feedback. Take your phone or go ahead and hit the survey. Let me post the survey in the link in the chat so you have it. We want your feedback. We want to know how we can do these better. Suggest, and I love it that Jake put his email up. If you want help with any of these, please let us know. We're here to help you be successful using these. Awesome. Last thing is, Morris, take us to the next slide. We'll close us out. If you want to stay in contact with us, just go ahead and join the HLS Community Connection. You can go ahead and register just by hitting the link, or we'll put the link in the chat, or take out your phone, hit the QR code, sign up. We do 30-minute snackable per month, little, 30-minute calls where you can come and join. We want your feedback. Morris has hosted a couple of months ago, and we had some great content, and this continues on and on. And he mentioned Copilot. We've got so much more to give all summer long. So we're really excited that you're here. Join up for the afternoon as well as tomorrow. So that's it for now. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right.